Hello, and welcome to another week of the Story Darks podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are wrapping November, and I think maybe the way the schedule worked that we're actually wrapping November in December.
Yeah, we didn't quite land that plane, but we came close.
But as I was thinking of it, I think us ending in December is actually very appropriate for a book called November that takes place primarily in October.
That's fair. Yeah, that is true. It is taking place Halloween night into, presumably like half the book takes place if you're being charitable, right?
The resolution is in November. Like all the postscripts are like, this is what happened to them in the month of November. And that's great.
And much further, much further beyond. That's weeks and months later. Sure.
Well, it's 6 months of time in jail and things like this. So
yeah.
Anyway, I mean, let's dive right into the ending.
Sure.
What did you think? How does this stack up in terms of comic endings? And granted, I think comic endings are a slightly different category than something like this.
I had a note about that too. I'm curious, because this is a book obviously I read as it came out. Volume 4 came out in February 2021, subtitled "The Mess We're In." And I said I was reading this as it was coming out, and I recall at the time kind of what I thought and kind of what I'm thinking going back to it now. But I'm curious for you as a first time reader, first time through now, even though you didn't read it in a binge per se, you read it back to back. You had all 4 volumes at your disposal at the time. So I'm curious what your thoughts on the ending are, because I will say off the top, I agree the way we judge comic endings, I think should be for like a monthly serial should be different than a book like this, because the structure like fundamentally is different. But what did you think of the ending? I'm curious what you were kind of where you are at when you finished.
So I have to say, I was like really only enjoying this book on a vibe level, in volumes 1 through 3. I was enjoying my time reading it. I was eager to like keep going in it, but I wouldn't say like the plot was grabbing me, and really the characters didn't really grab me. And I got to the end, and I wasn't really sure what exactly that corrupt officer was doing, other than he was doing corrupt stuff. He got a lot of money. There were other cops involved in it. And like, it was kind of blah, blah, blah. It didn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't think you can say like, you're not here to marvel at the mastermind of the criminal underworld like you do in The Wire.
No.
And I think you get invested enough in these characters as you go, but only in the end do you realize what each character actually needed. And to me, that was the most interesting part, that this was a book about 3 women seeking freedom, and they didn't even know what they needed to be freed from. Like when the story
I like
began.
That. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
So
I like that.
Like only when things were taken away and they then found their way forward, they found this level of freedom and liberation, almost like a weight off. Even though there's some mourning about what was lost, it's like, oh, now I actually get to go become myself. And for one of them, that's, buying an isolated, not quite log cabin, but a log cabin out in the woods, getting a dog. For another one, it's AA and a divorce. And the other one is 6 months in jail, and then
and also getting clean,
and a parole, and getting sober. Yeah,
Kowalski got clean off of alcohol. Dee got clean off of heroin, or I guess whatever she was taking. So yeah, for both of them, yeah,
right. And so I kind of like I have trouble putting what Emma Rose's like. What exactly was it keeping her in the city?
I don't know. That's my one nitpick, I think, is that we didn't get
other than like inertia. Like sometimes you're living somewhere and you're just like, well, I guess this is what I have to do because this is my life.
And I think that's what we're meant to see. Like what we're given with her, I think, is this idea that she needs to get out of where she was. I guess we saw her, those childhood flashbacks. Every time we go back to the kite, right? I think this idea, they keep going to this idea of letting go, and that she can't let go. Right? She keeps tying the string on to go further and further,
Right.
never let go in the kite. That seems like that's somewhere out in the country, right? And so it's like she broke free of that to get into the city, and then now is trapped in the city. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is like inertia, and she's stuck in this rut. And this is her excuse to then actually let go and find what she actually wants, what she actually needs. And that's all well and good if that's what her story is. But it's clear we didn't get the same level of detail that we got with Dee and with Kowalski that we got with Emma Rose.
And yet
You know,
she has the most overtly happy ending because
yes,
like
yes.
Kowalski's,
Well,
I was happy for her. She didn't end happy, but she ended fulfilled or like a sense of
or,
like,
well, I think,
I've got a path to walk now.
yeah, yes,
And
exactly.
she
Yeah,
was idling.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, she was like stuck in a wannabe cop job because she wanted to be a cop.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But she even says like, you know, okay, so yeah, I got divorced, but like I'm walking again, I'm sober, going to meetings. But at some point she says like, but I got to find a job, you know?
yeah,
So like it's not all great, but I think what I have written down for her is what she has is potential. You know, and she didn't have that before. She had
yeah,
nothing before, so now she has potential. And yeah, with D is basically back at the same job, like working at a counter, like working at a convenience store. You know, but she doesn't have, she doesn't have the shadow of Mr. Man's operation with the puzzles and all that. She doesn't have her addiction anymore. Um, she has a little bit of money stashed away still that the the cops didn't get. But yeah, she also she almost it seems like on the surface she's in the same spot she was before. She's still going to the diner every morning, right? Still doing the crosswords. I guess still living in the same building because there's that one panel of her like maybe giving some money to that little kid.
yeah,
Same little kid there. So on the surface, it seems like she hasn't gone anywhere, but we know that as a character, as a person, she's been changed fundamentally. But you're right; none of those are overtly happy, you know. But
right.
but we understand that there's been a change in those characters, and
Yeah.
I think that's
And
what
I was happy
you're happy
for
for
each of
them.
them at the end of right.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. I agree.
so it almost feels like it's like having the friend in your life who you want them to be able to see what they're missing and they just
Yeah.
can't. And when they
I,
have the little breakthrough, even if it's through an existential crisis, you feel
yeah.
a little happy for them.
There is something to be said for hitting rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
The idea. I mean, if you ever had anyone in your life who has dealt, at least specifically with something like addiction or something like that, right? Like there, you can try all you want to try and help them, but like there's nothing you can really do until they realize that they need help. And sometimes oftentimes it takes hitting rock bottom. Like you got to find the actual nadir for them to have a realization. And at that point, if this is someone you care about, you're not like, "Ha, I told you so."
Right.
Your reaction really is like, "All right, good, finally we got there. Now we can start building back up." And that's definitely how I felt for Kowalski and D. You're like, it takes this just extraordinary set of circumstances, this just incredible, unbelievable night in all the bad ways, and dealing with the immediate repercussions of that, whether it's D having to go to prison for 6 months, or Kowalski spending however long it took her to go through physical therapy, learn to walk again, things like that, having to deal with the immediate repercussions with the idea that there's the chance of some level of potential long-term happiness, or at least maybe not terribleness.
Yeah.
There's a chance at something now.
So all of that to say, I will say this is the type of ending that makes the book better than it was. And you'd been saying multiple times like, well, you're gonna want to own them. They look so good on a shelf. I'm like, that's true. I do love a book on a shelf, but I was like, I just can't imagine rereading, one through three. And as soon as I finished four, I was like, well, yeah, now I would reread it. Um,
Now you need all that context in there, to get to the type of ending you get to.
but it's a
Um,
big ask for
it
readers to
is
hang
well,
in through three prestige formats before you get just any
and,
sense of payment or satisfaction.
and I think that's a valid question to ask at this point. Now, it was definitely a big ask when it was coming out. And again, I think we've said multiple times, this book is sold. Initially, it was sold on Matt Fraction, like, because that's a name that people knew. That was a name at Image people knew specifically, and Elsa Charretier, again, she didn't have the name recognition, especially as an interior artist when this book was first coming out. So you have to put this first one out. You have to put that one out there and hope people see it, and hope they like it, and then you hope they buy in. Especially because you immediately say, "Oh, by the way, there's one more book now. It's four instead of three."
Right. It's
And
another
then
80
you're gonna have
pages.
to,
It's
yeah,
another $17.
and then you're gonna have to wait even longer because the world shut down for 6 months. Which obviously is out of their control. Nothing they can do about that. But still, they put one book out, and based on that, and as we talked about, you don't get a whole lot. You get a little bit of character. You get basically no story. It's all just questions at the end of that first one. So you're really asking people to trust them. To put their trust in the creators. Say like, this is going to, I don't want to say pay off or result. It's going to be a complete story when we get to the end, but you got to wait for it. Which it astonishes me now that this book has yet to be reprinted in any complete format. Again, the idea that like this seems perfect for like a complete nice paperback compendium. Give it all in one story. I think because I think this book reads very much like a book, with as we talked about how the chapters are numbered. They're numbered sequentially throughout all four novels, all four volumes. They don't restart every time. The heavy implication being that they're supposed to be read together in order. So why hasn't there been that?
Yeah.
I find that curious, especially now, and it seems like now too, because I think we talked about this in the Zero. There is this perception that Matt Fraction has been away from comics, and on some level that's kind of true in that he hadn't been putting out the same volume of material as he was, especially when he was deep in his time at Marvel and at Image. But the idea of him now being the main Batman writer, and that being a big deal, of like even DC kind of being like, hey, Matt Fraction's back, even though he never really went anywhere. But
Right.
the narrative is that he's back. Putting this book out now, again, that may have gotten lost in the shuffle because a lot of books got lost in that 2020 period. Something that you and I have talked about a bunch. We've covered a lot of books that have either came out in or around that time. A lot of those books got swallowed up because the industry was in such flood. There are so many questions at the time. And I could see this book, even though I think it did fairly well, it was recognized. People who read it really enjoyed it and reviewed it well, but it was still, the idea of four standalone, I'm talking about standalone published graphic novels coming out at that time, could be a harder sell. But if you use the fact that Fraction's kind of back in the comic news, he's back in the comic, like, front of mind for mainstream comic readers, because that's what happens when you write Batman, then putting this out or announcing, hey, this book he did a couple years back is now coming out in one complete story, November, as one novel instead of four, connecting graphic novels. That makes all the sense in the world to me. And also it's been out long enough now where I don't think you're hurting the sales of the original graphic novels, because that's always
Right.
a thing, right? From publishing,
Oh
don't
my
want to,
gosh, yeah.
if the hardcover's selling, that stays on the shelf because you can charge more for that. And only when it reaches a certain point, you put the paperback out and kind of get like the secondary sales, but you don't want to cut into that. Well, these books aren't getting reprinted as far as I know. What's out there is out there. Because I would think, I mean, even for this reread, I was stopping every volume to take notes so we could have our discussions here. But just in my mind, it was like I have yet to sit down and reread this story just nonstop, all four volumes. Like I
Right.
actually haven't done that because I hadn't revisited this book since I read it initially. But I would imagine it sits so much better if you can just flow all the way through, and everything that they present in all these in volumes 1 through 3 are very much front of mind for the reader. So when you get to the end, there is a level of satisfaction. You said right, even though it isn't like putting a button on at the end. It isn't a full wrap up, because that's not what the story was about, really.
Right.
But there is a sense of satisfaction and completeness to it that I do like.
I will say, I feel bad about this, but the one of the main thoughts I had as I was reading this is this what they should just do to finish out Saga? They're sent like just release one, 6 issue length OGN per year, because that's functionally what they're doing.
It is.
And they're like, individual comic sales have really trailed off, which is tragic and more of an indictment on people like me. Although I will say I still pull that in single issue and buy every trade. They're making Saga money off me, but I'm just like, but I bank them because I'm like, well, I'm going to get one chapter a month when I binge read the first 54 in basically 1 week.
Yeah.
And then it takes me another 10 years to get the rest of the story.
I mean, there is some, and not the Saga. I think that there are a number of books that I think, I don't want to say could benefit from that, to where it would make some level of financial sense, I think. But I think in the specific case of Saga, I do think Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples are very much dedicated to the single issue. And I don't think they would ever abandon that now. Now, again, not saying that they couldn't do that, and not saying that creators that put out graphic novel kind of length stuff are abandoning that. I think it just comes down to the creators' preferences and the types of stories they're trying to tell. Because as we talked about, right?
You let the story dictate the medium.
Because if Saga were to do that, you would get it. Let's say they would do that and just released one trade that was all 6 issues of the arc, it would still read like 6 individual issues, I think, because that's how Staples and Vaughn have constructed what how their story is laid out, how it's paced out. It's entirely different thing when you're saying, I'm just going to write 80 pages or 120 pages, and each section of this story is going to take however long as it needs to take. I don't have to worry about, every 22 pages, boom, got to hit an end, and then credits page run. You
not just an end, but often like a cliffhanger, like a compelling end that makes you pick up the next one.
You can let it run in that way, and I don't think again, specifically for Saga, they would have to. I feel like they would have to completely change how they think about the story and what they're trying to tell in that arc, and how they're literally structuring the pages together if they switch to that format. And again, and as we've talked about here, there is a world in which you can tell this story of November in single issue, but it's completely reorganized. You can absolutely tell this story in the single issue format if they wanted to, but you could not just cut up the chapters. Like, you would have to completely reorder, cut up and change, what you put where, what you do include, what you don't include. So it would be the same story, but it would feel completely different. The reading experience would be completely different, even if at the end of that version, you then also got a completed story, like a compendium of that. It would still read differently than the way they presented it here in these 4 graphic novels, or novellas, as it were. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I think there should. So I would say my big nitpick of the series is that they should have felt a little more pressure to reel you in more intentionally to like after you read one, I have to read two. And
I
I didn't
it's
feel that other than like I want to because I
so,
like
so
this creative team.
are you saying like a little more cliffhangery after each volume kind of thing?
Something just to like let you know what
Yeah.
you'll be seeing instead of just
Yeah.
kind of more vamping and droning, which is
Yeah.
what the book kind of does.
I mean, the only real cliffhanger is the end of three when we get that one shot of all three women together
And you
finally.
may recall that last week I
Yeah.
said I finished reading
Yes.
that
Yeah.
and just kept going
Yeah. And
because it
that
was the
is the
first time I
real.
felt that momentum.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only real stinger of like, oh, the story is moving forward now because this is a change of condition in the
Right.
story.
And I think there
Yeah.
were no flashbacks in volume four
Uh
for a story that
no,
has relied pretty heavily on flashbacks.
I it, no, not in terms of a full chapter. It um we do get kind of the Rashomon thing there where
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
we get as soon as the three women leave the room they're in and they see all the evidence, we get Dee's perspective, then we get Emma Rose's perspective, those exact same events, and then we pick up with Kowalski like right after the two other women leave. So we kind of get all that together there. But yeah, you're right. There are no like full on flashbacks there. Although I guess a little out of order though too, right? Because the very first chapter, the cold open, is Dee in the car she's driven away from the warehouse
Right.
before she makes the decision to turn around and drive back. So that's your little like your Pulp Fiction esque like this happens, an hour later than what you're gonna or whatever, So there's still a little bit of timey wimey jumbleness in terms of the order of things, but no like actual flashbacks. We don't jump back. We don't see uh, unless we're counting like the images of Emma Rose and the kite string, which I guess I'm not counting those as like flashbacks because we do
No,
get some
no,
of
that's
those at
not a
the end.
flashback.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's a little hat tip to what you already know.
yeah. It's calling back to that, but you're
And I
talking
think
about like
that's not
a chapter
even
of it, right?
right, a chapter
Yeah, yeah.
flashback. And I think those aren't even as much for like they're not informing the reader directly. I think they're telling you like this is the connective tissue in the character's brain.
They're telling you,
How
what she's thinking about. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's very different than how it was used earlier. Although, you could argue that, her fiddling with the rope, tying her hands was reminding her of, that. Although I don't think she would have had the presence of mind to like be having daydreams about when she was a child flying a kite while tied up in the back of a trunk.
Maybe, but
I've never
although
experienced that level of trauma, so maybe,
that's true. But but the way it's presented, though, the way that it's kind of intercut is the idea of she's trying to fiddle with the knot behind her back, and then you see her as a kid learning how to tie knots and all that. So maybe that could
but
be
yeah, that one
that could be
felt
just the reader.
more
It
for
could
the
be just the
reader.
reader, but it also could be just for the character as well. It could be a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I would say I was pretty consistently giving these volumes 1 through 3, like 3 stars, maybe 3.5 for volume 3, and this was a great way to land the plane, like 4.5 stars.
I think
Like
so.
a,
I
a
think
very
so.
serious,
Yeah.
a very serious elevation,
Yeah.
and
So
so
would
often,
the whole thing together be what 4 stars for you?
yeah,
Like yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no, I think taken as a whole piece, it would be a solid 4 stars for me. And although I will say I'm not sure it's my favorite Matt Fraction book, but I do appreciate seeing that he has this range
Yeah,
because
this is yeah.
like it will inform how I read his Batman now. Because um like so far, his Batman, we're still only 2, 3 issues in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
3 issues in.
super early. Yeah.
So like we don't really know what he's going to do with it. But when I heard he was doing, Batman, my thought was, oh, funny guy's doing Batman. It'd be like if
Yeah.
Kyle Starks got Batman.
Mhm.
I'm sure Kyle Starks could do like a real Batman that isn't like
Mhm.
a 90s action movie comedy type thing,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but
Well,
he's definitely typecast, right?
well, it's not too dissimilar when someone like Chip Zdarsky is given
Exactly. Yes.
Batman, or Captain America or Daredevil or something like that.
Right.
And
His was less surprising to me when he was already coming off of Daredevil. But when he got Daredevil, it was
yeah,
like,
that's true.
are we
Yeah,
going to go
that's yeah,
super campy with
yeah,
Daredevil?
exactly. Yeah.
And then hilariously, not Chip, but the following writer is the one who brought back the black armor, which is considered like, the cringiest, campiest
So
thing
it's the Black Armor is terrible. I'm
in
sorry.
Daredevil
It's
canon.
yeah, but yeah, but it is. I mean, obviously all these writers have all kinds of different speeds. But you're right. If you haven't experienced it, the stuff that Fraction has written. Again, him and obviously Chip work together on Sex Criminals. But like Casanova is this wild kind of book. Again, I talked about the Jimmy Olsen book, which is awesome. That book is like super absurd. It's hilarious and hysterical, but it's so wild. And it's very funny to read the way he writes Batman in that. Batman is hysterical in that book. And obviously that was not going to be the way he writes Batman when he's writing Batman. He can write Batman that way in that Jimmy Olsen book because it's a Jimmy Olsen book. But this idea that like, oh, a creator can only do one kind of thing. Yeah, obviously that stuff's kind of absurd, but it's hard to put your faith in it if you haven't seen it.
Right.
If you haven't read it. And him writing a book like this that is so grounded, like November is like, this is the most down to like real life, down to earth. I hate using the word gritty, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like this is regular.
Well, I also
normal,
hate using the word
average
noir,
people.
but like you
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
you
Well,
can't
yeah,
really sidestep the noir label.
yeah,
Um,
but that's obviously the tone they're going for, though. That's the feel and the vibe they're going for. They want this kind of. They
but it's a
want this
spin
kind
on
of.
it. It's a take
It
on
is.
noir.
Absolutely.
In the same way that about 12 months ago we covered Revival, which they called a rural noir. Was that their
Rural
term?
noir. Yeah,
Yeah.
rural noir.
Although
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I floated the idea of a Carhartt noir or something, and I
yeah.
think they like that in the
Which is the
interview.
same kind of idea, though. But
Yeah.
again, yeah,
Well,
it's
that would mean it's either rural or Brooklyn.
yeah, yeah.
For, for a
It's either
Carhartt noir.
farm or hipsters in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Two very different uses or ideas of what Carhartt is or what it's for. But yeah, it is. It is it is Fraction and Charretier have done this kind of neo crime noirish thing, but like not focusing on like the bad guys, as it were. You know, again, Brubaker and Phillips do noir better than anyone, but like Criminal is about the bad guys, quote unquote. Like it's all the characters are people on the wrong side of the law, as it were. So it's not about good guys or bad guys or what, but it's more stereotypical kind of noir crime story. This is, as you talked about at the top of the show, the actual crime that's going on, not important. It's not what this is about. It doesn't really matter if you know what they're doing. They're stealing evidence and then selling it again,
Which it's a little refreshing, right? Because I think
Yeah.
some of the lulls in things like, well, I might be flayed for suggesting that this has any flaws, but the flaws in like The Sopranos are like when you get really bogged down in like a particular operation they're doing that season, and it's like it doesn't matter.
well,
But like,
but well,
these are about that show's about the characters, and specifically about one character and how he relates to everything in the world.
that is very true. But you run the risk of like, if this guy is if he is who the show says he is, then like he can't be a screw up. Meaning he has to show competence, right?
Yes.
And
You have to see his savvy.
Exactly. And so thus it's not it. I don't think the audience is out of place in something like that to want to criticize or nitpick or parse the things that he does that he's supposed to be great at. Because if he's supposed to be great at it, then here we go. Go ahead and preemptively drink. The reason The West Wing works is because we see those people being hyper competent. And one of the many reasons why Studio 60 didn't work is because that show wasn't very funny at times in the ways it was supposed to be funny. In that if this is supposed to be like the top comedy people and performers on television, then when they are in character in the show, that stuff should be super funny. And it wasn't. And that hurts so, and you can have all the fake canned laughter in universe all you want. If the person watching on the screen doesn't think it's funny, then they're not believable as being competent at that job. Versus when you watch President Bartlett speak, when you watch Sam and Toby write a speech and all that, you see the competence, and so you know it. And that is because that's built into the character. And that's what the story is about. It's about these people who are great at this thing. You have to show it. This book isn't about it's about three random, regular, normal women, regular people. It's not about the scheme. So we don't have to know the ins and out. We don't have to, all we have to know is that it works, or it did for a time. And then something went wrong. Someone betrayed someone and everything went to hell. That's all we have to know. Because we're on the outside of this, just like our three main characters are. And, that's a pretty nifty hack to get around needing to get in the weeds.
Right.
You don't have to show it. You don't have to show your work because you're telling your audience that's not what it's about.
But I think what you're identifying here that is important to me is that or I guess that is the self-revelation in reading this. Sometimes you read the book and other times the book reads you. I think I was not drawn into these characters because there was nothing exceptional about any of them. And I do love an exceptional character. I love someone that is like, even if they're like kind of a jerk, they're super smart, I forgive it. Or if they're not that, Forrest Gump, if they're not that bright, but they're really pure. They're really good. And these characters aren't any of those things.
Yeah.
They're just, I guess
they are regular people. I was going to say
it's wrong to call them the everyman when it's a story about three women.
But they are regular people. And it was clearly their intent to not show, these are not hyper competent. They're not the greatest, the best. They all have flaws. They're just trying to they're just trying to get to the next day, and this story being about the near inability to get to that next day and what that struggle is and how it's magnified. It's not the kind of story you get often. And it was clearly their intention of just being like, hey, this stuff happens. And here's what the other side of that story looks like. Here's what the other side of the Michael Bay cop, dirty cop kind of action movie is. Here's your Greek chorus looking in on that. The folks on the street, the random person on the street walking by. What's that person's life like? When all this goes down, which I think I think that's a cool idea. I like that idea, and I like the way that they didn't either give in or feel any temptation to make it any more than that.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we've gotten to like your official rating, and your rating will be a little different than mine now. Mm-hmm. Like how do you in broad brush think of the book now that you've done it on reread? It's probably not even your first reread, but you read it knowing where it was going.
Yeah.
So all of these character beats are a little more meaningful to you as you go.
I liked it better on reread because I remember the first time I read volume 4 when it came out, I wasn't disappointed with the ending, but I remember the part that I was disappointed about was we didn't get more time with the three women interacting with each other. Because I wanted a little more of that. That little bit of them basically arguing, in front of all the stolen evidence. I was like, oh man, I wanted I almost wanted a contrived scenario where those three women had to stay together and just keep like bickering and working through their issues together.
Because I think at that point it starts to turn into the 90s buddy cop.
Yes, it would have been inorganic. Absolutely. But the first time I read it, back when it came out, I was like, oh God, I wish I had some more of that. because that was so fun. And because you're building this moment of all these women together and like trying to figure out what the hell is happening here.
Right.
Why us? Is there any reason? Of course, the answer to that is there is no reason why. It's because you were there, you know? Kowalski, yes, she was involved with this initially, but she didn't have to be involved now. She made herself involved. You
Right.
know? Um, you know, uh, uh, Emma Rose didn't have to be involved in this. She was trying to be just a good citizen by calling in, hey, I found a gun. I saw a gun on the street, you know? That's wrong place, wrong time. But she did the quote unquote right thing. She wasn't targeted for anything other than that. And then you have Dee, who is in a position of like, you know, she's adjacent to what's going on here and had no idea what her involvement was until that end revelation when she sees all the stuff there, you know?
Yeah.
Not saying she's purely innocent, but like, yeah, there's no specific reason why these women should be involved. And so seeing any scenes of them trying to hash that out, again, it would have felt totally contrived. So at the time I felt like, I wish there was some more of that stuff, but knowing how it ends and knowing how the story wraps up, coming back to it now, I can appreciate it more of understanding who those characters are and why they would have been like, yeah, you know what? Peace. I'm out of here. Like, I don't care, like, it's not my responsibility to be around here. There's some money here. This stuff is stolen from dirty cops. Well, then, like, I guess no one's going to miss it if I take it. That sort of thing, just having this understanding and being like, listen, we're not an us, we didn't form a super team. Like this book doesn't end with the three of them meeting up at a coffee shop and being like, okay, what's the next thing we can take down?
Right.
Because that's how the bad TV drama procedural version of this story works out, right? Or how the movie works out. These three disparate women or characters come together through unforeseen circumstances, and then at the end, they're like, okay, what's next? What are we doing together? And here it's like, no, man, that's not how it goes. That's not what this is about. And so having that in the back of my mind, I think I could appreciate the character journeys more and appreciate them not just in volume 4, but all the buildup in the previous 3 volumes. So yeah. I think it, because I knew where it was going, and that singular expectation of, I just can't wait to see what happens when these 3 women come together. Knowing that would, because initially that was part of motivation story-wise for me. This is going to happen. We're going to get there, and that's going to be explosive. Or whatever that's going to be great. And the book's not interested in that, because what I didn't know at the time when I was first reading it is that that's not what the book's about. So having that knowledge coming into a reread, I could appreciate all the other stuff more. So I think this rises for me just a little bit higher on a reread. Just because I'm more familiar and I can spend more time away from what's actually happening on the day of and really look at how they laid tracks for these characters, what they reveal, what they say about them, and how they ultimately come to some level of resolution for who they were, where they were in their lives, and where they could be going forward at the end. So I like it a little more now.
Yeah, I think that's all really well said. And I think, yeah, that really says it all. Now, we haven't really talked about anything in the book. I mean, we kind of hit on like basically where it ends. Is there anything going through the story that, like, to me, the storytelling, it didn't really change. Lettering's still very difficult for Kowalski's journaling.
And
it's just Kowalski, so it's a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the eye looks like a 7.
Yes. The narration for her, that cursive is still very difficult. Again, they keep with, Charretier and Matt Hollingsworth, the colors, they keep with that same motif. It still looks visually very beautiful. That's something that I've talked about, that this is a book that, while I hadn't, since it came out, I hadn't gone back and reread it like panel for panel, up until rereading it for this show now, but it's a book I had gone back to just to flip through and look at and just follow the colors, follow the just the artwork and everything that's laid out, because I love how it works. I love how it looks on the page. It looks so incredible to me. So it's a book that
Now,
I will always come back to, just visually, you know, separate, completely separate from the story itself. Just on the
yeah.
page as artwork, it looks beautiful. I love it.
Now, when you say follow the colors, there was a very compelling one here because I did wonder, there's been such distinct point of view coloring
Hmm.
throughout. Once they're all three in the same room, whose coloring wins? And it's a matter of whose perspective you're getting because in
Yeah,
chapter 13, you're getting like I think it's Dee's coloring.
yeah,
And then in 14, you're in the same setting with the same people,
yeah.
but you're getting Emma's coloring.
It's got that like blue green to it.
Right.
While
So like
D's has
it's
like that
who's
kind of faint. Yeah.
and that's
Yep.
kind of how aside from the handwriting, that's how you learn who's telling whose
Hmm.
thoughts you're reading right now.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
And then again, then
that's just incredible legwork
yeah.
from both the colorist and letterer, who I
Hmm.
think are the two most unsung hero. You know, we always complain about the fact that it's considered a writer's medium by many, and they'll always say, "Oh, did you read November by Matt Fraction instead of
Yeah.
November by Matt Fraction and Elsa Charretier?" Um, and then you know, so many times there are letterers and colorists who are making significant creative contributions, and even if someone is, you know, like you don't want to be so pedantic that you're standing in the comic shop and
Yeah.
you refer to November and you list the entire creative team.
Yeah.
You know, just giving a recommendation to someone. On the other hand, like if I was making a genuine pitch to someone, I would include everyone here. I would
I would too.
say,
Yeah. Well,
like, you know, Matt Hollingsworth and Kurt Ankeny do insane work on this
yeah.
book.
And I think there's something to be said, like when you talk about November as a project, this book was created by Matt Fraction and Elsa Charretier. That's a fact. This book wouldn't exist without them. But when you're, so that's like the idea of the book, if you recommend it to someone. When you're talking about specific things in the story itself, those story choices are added to by the colorist and the letterer, you know? So they're involved in the storytelling, but not so much maybe in the story creation. You know that isn't a semantical difference. Like those are meaningful. So the actual storytelling is the whole team together. But story creation, you know, what you're reading is comes from the listed creators. How you read it comes from the whole team there. I do want to note too at the end, which I think is significant, that the postscripts, because we get three postscripts, obviously, we get one for each of our characters. If you notice, those are colored, I'll say traditionally.
Hmm. Yeah.
They don't have a filter on them. They look the most I, normal, I guess, in terms of how the definition in the background. You know that everything has a color. The clothes people are wearing, their skin tone looks like skin tone. You know, it doesn't have the filter on it. All three of the stories, all three of those,
What's your
um,
life looks like without alcohol, without drugs,
yeah,
without,
without
you
being
know,
yeah. And again, that's clearly an intentional choice that they made. That whatever filter was on their world, their viewpoint is gone now, and that you are seeing the world now in like full, vibrant color. You know, again, as you would see it in a quote unquote normal or typical graphic novel setting. And again, I think a choice like that is very cool because it's very subtle. It's not subtle. It's very overt. But if you're not paying attention, you just read through and you get to the postscript. You know, you're just seeing a colored comic, the way that you would almost expect to see it. But when you compare it to the 3 3/4 volumes that came before,
right.
it's completely different. They're the only pages that look like that. And yeah, it's obviously meant to set a message of the mindset of each of the characters of where they are now. So again, little things like that aren't they don't need to be from the creative team. They don't need to be explicit about, but they do that. So even if you aren't paying attention that closely when you read it, you still get it on some level. There's some subconscious level in the way that your eye scans across the page and picks up information, that you're understanding what they're trying to get across, without two idiots like us babbling on about it specifically. You can read it and just get it. you
Yes.
know you know but it is,
No, I
it's
just wanted to take a
but it's
moment
worth
to
pointing out.
celebrate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's worth pointing out to say, like, hey, you should see this stuff, because this stuff isn't by accident. They made a choice to do this. And so the reason you feel this way when you get to this part of the book, or the reason your feeling changes when you get this part of the book, is because the people who made it have, for lack of a better word, they have manipulated you. They have steered you in a way. And if they've done their job correctly or done it successfully, you're going to feel and think and understand the story the way they want you to do those things. And they're going to do it in subtle ways, in overt ways, some explicitly on the page, some that are 3-4 levels deep in the creative process. And all that stuff is what makes reading this stuff so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's my really last discussion question is, how would you now, like, knowing where it ends, like, does it change I'm in a comic shop, I'm talking to someone, find out what they like, I want to recommend this book to them. I think if and I've taken many books on recommendation like that with mixed results from strangers in comic shops. You're just talking to the other guy there, you're kind of vibing a little bit, and you're like, tell me something to read. It's a great thing about the brick and mortar comic shop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think if I was talking to a stranger and they told me, like, oh my gosh, it's Mad Fraction, it's Elsa Charretier, you're going to love it, pick up volume 1, I think I would pick it up and be like, meh. Like, I don't know if I'm going to invest another $45 to finish this story.
Well,
So how does your pitch overcome that?
Okay.
Or
just buy all 4. Well, so my flip.
Yeah, you go to our comic shop, which does on like their Black Friday sale is like anytime they have a sale, Black Friday,
yeah, or free
Christmas
comic,
or comic
day. Yeah.
It's buy 2 get 1 on all OGN's graphic novels.
Yeah,
and it'd be
well,
that's not that bad.
Which means you got to buy. You buy the 3 of them, you get 1 of them free. To buy the 4th one, you got to get 2 more, because that second one gets you another free. I mean, that's just how it works.
Well, yeah, and you have to be very calculating, as I am, not to buy any Image first volumes where, like, your free one ends up being the $10 one.
$10 one, yeah.
And I don't fault the shop for doing that. That's how, like, your point of sale system is set up to register free ones. Yeah. So I spent all my time like, okay, which ones would I buy, and now which ones have the same price tags?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're buying a lot of volumes 2 through 7, and then you know what? I'll get volume 1 some other time.
I'll get the 9.99 one later. Yeah.
So I want to flip this question on you. If this book existed in a single volume compendium, all 4 volumes, which would be what? They're 80 pages each, so it'd be 300 and.
Yeah, you give me a paperback compendium for $30.
I was gonna say, if
I would take the plunge.
Part I was gonna ask is, A, is that an easier sell for you, and B, what is that price point going to be for something of that volume? Because again, we're talking about, these are like, each of these are like they're like 2.5 issues worth of material, regular size. If an issue is like 30-ish pages, and these are 80 each, so you're talking about. You got just about 10 issues worth of material, which is that's a good compendium size. A paperback compendium, you can get 10
it's
to 12
320 pages.
Yeah. So,
without backup material and things that they would throw in.
Exactly. Yeah.
320 pages of story. And so I'm saying, like, I guess it
could be like 340 overall or something like that, but if that were like $30 or $40 or something like that,
the $30 would be a no-brainer. $40 would be like, I gotta hear some reviews of this first.
Okay,
but what I'm trying to think of the comp here,
but it would be easier. I was trying to think of
the comp would be, to me, like,
real quick, can you
compare this letter 44, which I read in compendium, paperback compendium.
Yeah.
856 pages
Yeah.
and $60. So
Okay. Okay. Right.
$30 is actually still a little high per page.
Yeah. Yeah.
By
But
compendium,
not
but
unreasonable.
compendium, you're getting it like
Yeah.
the goal of the compendium is typically $1 an issue. Obviously, that doesn't work when you're converting OGNs to a compendium.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like or omnibuses,
Mhm.
they're usually trying to get you to half cover price or less,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is the appeal of them. Plus, they look awesome on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
We both agree on hardcover omnis. Like they're
Yeah.
just not that readable.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
a great experience.
Yeah.
I think I like paperback compendiums and you don't, but I don't care if my paperback compendium gets beat up and looks like a reader copy because that's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Now some of them are made incredibly well. Like they lie open beautifully no matter where you are. Some of them don't. Like the ones that I really like right now. Image is putting out compendiums of the original GI Joe and Transformers from the Marvel days, and those books are like comically big, but they're on like the old school kind of newsprint, so they're like super light, but they look ridiculous. But they read great though. They lay great. They lay flat and open beautifully, but it's still there's something comical about it. But back to what I was saying here, if you're saying $30 for a full compendium of this paperback compendium, that would be enough, with the understanding of, hey, it's Matt Fraction, that person. And if you didn't know it was Charretier, hey, just flip through it a little bit, you see the art. That'd probably be enough to sell you on it. But it's a harder to sell at this point if I just said, hey, here's volume 1, read this.
Yeah, because I don't know if I
Yeah.
felt $17 of value out of volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very hard thing to quantify
Totally.
because there are single issues I've read where I felt $17 of value. In extreme cases, and like one of the ones I would go to just for the creative medium and because it really only functions well in single issue is, I always get the number wrong. Issue 17, the Choose Your Own Adventure of the Unwritten.
Of the Unwritten, sure.
Like just an all-time favorite. Like what a friggin' masterpiece.
Yeah.
And you have to hold the book the other direction and you have to flip back and forth a lot. It's a Choose Your Own Adventure. And when you get that in the unwritten compendium, it's just
really
like
hard.
What a pain in the ass.
It's really hard.
Even in the trade, it's kind of a pain. And even reading it digitally. Now, that one would be a very interesting case for the guided view if it had the options on each page to if you do this, jump here.
I don't know if
there's
it does.
There's no way it does.
No way it does.
Absolutely no way.
No way it
that
does,
book got that attention. Now, if somebody did that on like if they did that to a Nightwing book or something, then I think they'd be like, okay, well, big DC property, and they want it this way. We'll take our time to format it that way. Or maybe you go with one of the new, emerging digital publishers like Neon Ichiban or a Sweet Shop. Is that the new one that's not dropped yet? Maybe that's a very creative way to work with them where you say like, we don't want you to create your own guided view. When it's appropriate, we will tell you, we'll let the artist, the creative team, or the editor tell you how you are able to format this type of thing. But but
you're right.
To impose like a third party reading structure on a book is bad.
Yeah, you can't do that. But you're right though. The things like that are what make the medium so much fun, that you can toy with and just kind of almost break what reading structure is. That it's not just page at the page at the page. Even a book where if you're not jumping around, that may force you to turn the book around. There's an issue of New 52 Batman, Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, that you're reading it in a spiral, you're turning it around like that. That's part of the experience, and I know some people don't like that, but it is what makes. It's one of the things that makes reading comics unique, is that you can have that opportunity there. And yeah, when you get those special issues, yeah, they're cool like that. But yeah, this book isn't meant to be that. This book is meant to be one story. It's meant to be a novel, and handing someone the first quarter of it, I can see that being a hard sell. Like I said, I don't know how I would sell it to someone other than be like, if you're asking me for recommendations, and I've probably read more comics than you, and so you got to trust me on this one. This is like
Right. That's the pitch.
yeah,
Because otherwise,
my pitch
it's
is I
like
know more than you. Sorry.
a little bit of it is like the very well, I call it unpopular. More and more people are doing it now. But when you take like the final book of a series and you split it into two movies, or if you
Yes.
say, I don't know, this is strictly hypothetical. If you take the shortest of the Lord of the Rings books and split it
Yeah.
into three movies,
Yeah.
each of which having its own extended cut, that would be absurd, right? It
Yeah.
would be like, wait, I paid $12 to see The Hobbit in XD, and you got a third of the way through the story, and you're telling me I have to come back a year and a half later, pay you another $12, and I get another installment of a book I could have read in the
Yeah.
length of time it takes to watch the extended cut. Um, I think that's a little bit what it feels like.
A
Not to be
book like
unfair to the authors.
a book like this, I think, in not single issue, but in single novella form. If I were to recommend this to someone, the recommend this is the kind of book that the recommendation hinges on me, not the creators. I'm the
Okay.
one I'm the one.
My recommendation is
what I'm
always
saying?
hinging on the person I'm talking to. Like
Well,
I
well,
want to tie it to whatever I know about them.
well, oh, absolutely. But then it also comes down to what do I know about this person? Do I think they're going to like it? But also, I'm telling you, this is worth the read. So you need to trust me that like if the creators, if the names on the book and me describing what the story is or potentially isn't enough to hook you, and like you said, after that first volume, if you're not really that hooked, what I'm selling you on is the fact that you think I have some level of knowledge and understanding that can take the things that you like and say that when this gets like, trust me on this one. It's that person putting their trust in me that I'm not steering them wrong,
Right.
because there may not be enough. There are some books you just hand, you be like, yeah, read the first one. If you're not hooked on at the end of this one, then that's fine. Walk away. There are plenty of books that are like that. If you get to the end and of that first volume, it doesn't matter who's handing it to you. You're bought into the story. If you're hooked at that point, knock yourself out and go and read it. This book isn't like that. So this is the book. This is the kind of recommendation where you got to trust the person who's giving the recommendation. You have to have a level of trust that, like, I understand the kind of things that you like to read, and you got to trust me on this one, that this one is worth your time to invest in. And that's harder to do in the in its current 4-volume state. Unless you can somehow convince someone to blind buy all 4 volumes, which is a much harder task than asking someone to blind buy one paperback compendium for $30.
Yeah, I mean, the stupid thing is, as we were discussing this book, I've been reading it digitally, and I looked at like instocktrades.com, which still has this book,
Mhm.
and they're $10 a piece because they sell everything discounted there.
Yeah.
But even as I was reading 3, I was like, yeah, look cool on the shelf, but I've already read it. I'm not sure I'd ever read it again. I'm not even sure I would pay $40 for it. And now I'm like, well, now they stuck the landing, and now I would love like the main reason I buy trades is to lend them to people, like
Yeah.
to like check this out. I think you'll like it, because nothing excites me more than helping someone find something that they just really vibe with.
And
Which
it
is
would be
largely
easier.
what this podcast is supposed to do.
It would be easier on that front to hand someone a full compendium and
Well,
be
yes, that's true
and be
too.
like, and this is a novel. This is one story versus here's part 1, or I'm going to give you all 4 of these right here. Handing someone 4 hardcover novellas feels like work. It does, right?
I mean, a
It feels like
compendium
work.
can as well.
Well,
Um,
but there is a psychological thing of I'm handing you one story versus I'm handing you four stories. Even though the four stories ultimately are just one story, visually your mind tells you
True.
there are
Although the
four
four
books I got
stories
to
are
get through.
bite-sized, which is nice.
It's still though there's something about it. It is much easier if you just hand someone. It doesn't matter if it's kind of a brick there. Although again, a compendium with this story wouldn't be out of the ordinary sized. You know, it wouldn't be one of the bricks. It'd be big, but it wouldn't be a brick on your bookshelf. That's an easier sell if you can hand it to someone and be like, here, just read this book, and knowing that they'll just go through it without stops, no breaks and get the whole story there. I think it's a much more fulfilling reading experience for someone approaching it in that way, if they had the opportunity to do that, versus trying to convince someone who may not already be a comic reader to say, hey, read all four of these, read all four of these hardcover graphic novels.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, so begins the official lobby from Story Dark's podcast to Image Comics to release the compendium. Please join us in this noble cause, but we're not going to turn into the release the Snyder Cut toxic level fan base.
No. Because we don't want a different version. We just want a newer one. And they could get you could put out you get a new cover from Elsa Charretier, right? So you can put that out there as new artwork. Maybe you throw some extras in there like sketches and whatever bonuses like script pages and things like that. A lot of stuff you can kind of zhuzh it up with. But this is one of those books that it just, especially the time frame now that as we're recording this, we're almost 5 years since volume 4 came out, like a 4 and change. So
what is
like
time?
I know. It feels like it feels like the kind of time frame now where you're like, okay, maybe it's time for people to kind of rediscover this book now, like you and I are talking about it here on this show now. It's like enough time has passed where anyone who thought to read it and didn't has maybe forgotten about it, or people don't know it exists. And so you can put out a new version and kind of re-spark interest or spark interest for the first time into it. I think it'd be something that'd be really, really cool. And I think it would, I think it would read so well in just a completed form as just the novel November versus the 4 novellas. I think it'd be really cool. So maybe someday, hopefully someday soon, I think it'd be something that they could, maybe Image gets around to doing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this series?
No, I don't think so. I think it was cool covering a Fraction book, and I Elsa Charretier is one of my most favorite artists, whether she's doing covers or interiors for her own series or a guest kind of one shot in some other ongoing series. So I'm really glad we got to cover these two creators. Two of my favorites. So
yeah,
and there are a lot of Fraction options out there. There are a lot of places we could have gone with Fraction. So
well, I mean, we've kicked around, I don't know, half a dozen Fraction titles probably in the past, and I'm sure we'll be doing more Fraction in the future. Chip is very, very high on my list, but frankly,
definitely we got to get Zdarsky too.
I'm waiting on, like, I think I might be waiting too long, and we could just do something because we have an unspoken, I think it's an unspoken rule on this podcast, not to cover the same creator within a 12-month period.
Yeah, it's
which
a
means
soft rule, but
it's to attenuate my recommendations of Jeff Lemire books.
Yeah, and also mine for Brubaker and Phillips.
Exactly. Yeah. So we each have there are good reasons for the rule, but we might be able to do a Chip Zdarsky and then have 12 months pass and then cover what I really want to cover, which is the pairing of the public and the domain, which I think is maybe like paused or hiatus right now. Or
that one I don't want to say is in limbo. That would
love it.
That'd be very cool. That one's I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's in limbo. But public domain, I think the comic within a comic, the domain, I think that probably, I mean, there could be another series of that, but in terms of public domain, the actual, the comic about the comic, it's very strange. That made us be a kind of on a pause right now as Chip's got a lot of stuff going on, especially over at Marvel right now as we're recording this. So, and that's a book he writes and draws himself. So, that's not like he's not handing that book off to anybody else. But yeah, there is, there's a lot of stuff we kick around and want to get to. And also, giving ourselves that soft rule of not covering the same creators too often is that we want to highlight as many kind of diverse creators as we can, you know? Someone like Elsa Charretier, we wouldn't get to very often, is not someone you would think about getting to. But the fact that she worked on this book here is a way to talk about her and highlight her work and
right, yeah, because her most natural other entry point would be Love Everlasting,
with Tom King,
except
yeah.
if we're talking Tom King, we're
Yeah.
not doing Love Everlasting. No disrespect to Love
Yeah.
Everlasting,
Yeah. Also,
but it's not quintessential Tom King.
yeah. And it's also still technically ongoing, I guess. I don't know. But yeah,
Right.
so, but,
But in
Tom
the same
King's
way, I guess you could say this isn't quintessential Matt Fraction. So
yeah, and we haven't done like quintessential books for some of these creators before, which I think is cool. It's maybe a book that people don't. I mean, November probably isn't the book most people think about when they think of Fraction. They think of
nowhere is
Hawk-
mimetic when people think of Tynion, right?
exactly, or the Nightly News with Jonathan Hickman.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, but Frax is a name. Matt Frax is a name that people know. That if you're in comics, you definitely know. And maybe you didn't read November, because you've probably definitely heard of Sex Criminals. You know about Hawkeye, Immortal Iron Fist. Probably maybe his work on X-Men. Again, maybe you read that Jimmy Olsen book. I hope you read the Jimmy Olsen book. It's so funny. Go read that. And if you follow any comic news, he's writing Batman now. But maybe you haven't read some of these up from a book like November. And if we can shine any light on that for some of these creators, like the Apocalyptic Trilogy for James Tynion, like the Nightly News, which I think we talked about, that was like Hickman's first comic book, or one of the first two he pitched the Image initially, and see what he's gone on to do from then. I think that stuff's cool. I like, not to be too hipster about it, but being like, hey man, these creators have worked a long time and they got a wide body of work, and it isn't just the superhero stuff. It's not just the top line creator and stuff. Dig a little deeper, you get some really, really cool stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta tell you, it's time to wrap, but I was walking past putting trades back on my shelf today, and I did walk past my huge block of 10 trades of Morning Glories, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, that's one we haven't played that drinking game in a while.
We
But
haven't mentioned it in a while.
I could faintly hear the voice of Thanos saying, "I am inevitable."
I mean,
It's like,
I mean, I don't want to say that's the end of the show when we do that book, but if we ever announce Morning Glories, you can go ahead and be like, okay, they were really scraping for something. Like they couldn't find a book, and they need to tread water for 2 months. That
well, I mean, first of all, that one I'm quite certain we would knock out 2 volumes at a time, which means we'd do it in a month. But like, just the bitter disappointment of like, you just feel like you're just starting to figure out what the hell's going on, and then they just pull a rug out from under you and it's gone, and that's never coming back. I'm
maybe
certain. Like, I don't think the book would work now, which I think is another very interesting discussion that would emerge.
That would be one of the more wild things in comics if Spencer and Eisner were like, you know what? Morning Glories 51 coming out next summer. That would be crazy if that happened. But who knows? One of these. I mean, if we speak it enough, we'll manifest it on accident, whether we like it or not. So, but yeah, we should probably figure out what book we're talking about next, though. Keep an eye on the socials.
Mystery. Yeah.
Keep an eye on
next
that.
week,
Yeah.
you'll get perhaps even an enigmatic Zero episode introducing a whole charcuterie of creators that you didn't know were related. We haven't done like a theme month in a while, and that's when we get really crazy with the Zero episodes, where it's like, here's all the people we're going to cover for the next month. Although I
Or
And
it could be a one shot. I don't know yet.
it could be one shot. Yeah, we've got the month of December to cover, and then I absolutely loved beginning 2025 with Death Month. My favorite thing we've ever done was Death Month.
Do you want
And
another theme
I
month in
want
January?
another theme month in January.
Okay.
I want that
All
to
right.
be the annual thing.
All right. All right.
Um,
We'll,
yeah.
we'll kick some ideas around.
And just like the annuals in comic books, it's a large collection of like scattered things
Yeah.
that is cohesively held together by one theme or character.
By something. Yeah.
So anyway,
I'm down.
You can find us Instagram Story Darks, technically Facebook Story Darks, Blue Sky Story Darks, or storydarks.com. Search for us on your podcast, your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend. And drop us a line on social, leave a comment. What do you don't tweet at someone on Blue Sky. You sky us. I don't know.
You can reply. You post about it.
Yeah, you post, reply. Give us a suggestion, or at least beg us not to do Morning Glories. Because I really do think I would have a blast with that book, but I think I would regret it by the third episode.
Yeah, that'd be tough. But
and I would certainly regret it at the fifth episode.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for listening. We will see you here next week.
Peace.